Hi, everyone. My name is Gigi Sabbat, and I'm a motivational keynote speaker and the CEO and founder of Life Service Center of America. And I'm so excited to share on Conversations with Pearl today. Such an honor to be here.
Hello, sunshine. Good to see you again. Had to walk out to let you back in. Stuck in a storm of a relationship. Lost my fire. Oh, and I forgot about me for way too long. But it's rolled on. Now there ain't no shade around here. Won't you leave the clouds you're under? Ain't it funny how there ain't no rain or clean? Why'd it take so long to leave you in the rearview mirror? Now nobody gonna steal my sunshine or turn my blue sky gray. All I know is at the end of the day, wildflowers grow when there ain't no shade.
Hey everybody, it's Pearl, and I want to welcome you again to another episode of Conversations with Pearl. And I'm so excited. Our next guest, I've gotten to know her over the past few months. I've spoken on one of her summits as well. And Gigi Sabbat, she is the CEO and founder of Life Service Center of America, motivational keynote speaker. She's an award-winning author of Walk With Me and God First books that have been endorsed by Les Brown. She's co-authored for several best-selling book collaborations, life coach and confidence coach. She is a first-generation Haitian American financial expert, Florida chapter leader for World Women Conference and Awards, the host of Walk With Me podcast on JRQ TV, domestic violence advocate, sexual assault advocate, breast cancer advocate, human trafficking, and mental health advocate. And I'm so excited to have her on the show today and have some great conversations around what she does and how we can empower you as you're listening to us today. And let me tell you, ladies, I just came off of our 7th annual pajama retreat. And let me tell you about empowerment. I feel like this week is all about, that's the word of the week right now. So I just want to welcome you to the show, Gigi.
Thank you, Pearl. It's such an honor to be here with you today.
So excited to have you here. So I did not know that about you, first generation Haitian American. It's awesome. My our oldest son, Matthew, who is now our forever angel at 25, he was Haitian American and Czechoslovakian. So it was interesting trying to learning some of his history. And I just love that. So welcome. I'm so excited to have you. And I know he's sort of watching over us right now in this great conversation we're going to have today. So tell everybody a little bit about you. Take us back to when you were younger and what led you to do what you're doing today.
Absolutely. Great question. And so, yes, my parents essentially came from Haiti several years ago. And when you asked, what am I currently doing today? I'm a motivational keynote speaker and the CEO and founder of Life Service Center of America. And I love helping others achieve their goals. And so essentially a few years ago, I actually almost lost my life, death by strangulation in a domestic violence relationship. After everything that happened, I stepped into God's purpose for my life and I launched a podcast, launched the books, and I launched the company Life Service Center of America.
So tell us, your parents came here and you were born here, or were you born in Haiti and then came over?
Great question. So essentially, I was born in Coral Springs, Florida. Back then, no one knew what that was. And we'd say Miami. They say, oh, okay, South Florida. I'm familiar with it now. Yes. And so definitely love South Florida. It's a beautiful area as well. And then I grew up in Palm Coast and then also went to Orlando. That's where my alma mater is, UCF, University of Central Florida. And go Knights. And, yes, ma'am. And I love it out here. I love it in Florida.
My younger son almost went to UCF. He ended up at Florida Polytech, which while he was there, UCF tried to take over Florida Polytech, which became a huge thing. It was sort of an unknown thing that UCF was trying to do. And the dean of Florida Poly got a hold of it. And I remember all of us parents was like, no, let's rally together. So it was a great experience. So tell us, when you were younger, what was life like growing up, having parents that immigrated here to the U.S. and how did they help in bridging the culture of where your family's from to where you are here in the U.S.? How did that coincide?
That is a very great question. And so essentially, when my parents arrived here and everything they taught my brothers and I growing up, they instilled in us the importance of education. They instilled in us the importance of working and work ethic. Not just that, but they also instilled in us values and morals. And my faith means the world to me.
Yeah. And I think I love that because I feel like some of that is sort of missing today. We forget that we should be centered on, our faith and our values and our morals. And I talk about that often when I'm working and coaching with clients about who is lining up with those morals and values in your life. And if they're not, I have a friend, she calls them your balcony people, my friend Lisa. Are they supposed to be on your balcony? Are they supposed to be hanging out on your back patio or your front porch with you? And if not, it's okay to say, you're no longer welcome, or I have to put the boundary around that relationship. And I love that your parents did that for you and your siblings. I think it's something that to build on and bring into. And I know in working with you, I see that you speak it, you show it in everything you do. And I think it's amazing. And so tell us a little bit about, your story, the domestic violence. And for anybody that's listening, we just want to say, we may talk about things that might trigger you. And if that's the case, please, reach out for help, or reach out to me via the show as well. But tell us a little bit about that, and, about that story, and how, because this has been a conversation I've had this week. I've met you and some other ladies that have been on the show through Michelle Jewsbury. And so, it's a story that we have to share. And it's a story that it's hard sometimes when you're in the middle of that, what's happening, you don't feel like you have the power to leave and to make a change. And so walk us through that for you, Gigi, and how did you finally step into the power of saying, this isn't acceptable and I need to make a change and do something?
Absolutely. And so, yes, ma'am, I did share that at Michelle Jewsbury's conference, as you mentioned earlier. And going back to domestic violence and the importance of raising awareness, it's very important. Not just that, but also educating others. So important. And when we talk about strangulation is the number one cause of death in those type of relationships. And yes, we need to talk about it. And so essentially a few years ago, I almost lost my life, death by strangulation. And I'll never forget. I was sitting on the phone call with the colleague. I was on the couch. I was sitting on the phone, and the abuser charged at me, beat me, almost strangled me to death, threw my phone across the room. And when I tried to get back up, I fell flat like a vegetable. And this is what I want to tell your listeners today: do not give up. No matter if you've been through that situation, if you can hear me today, I encourage you to keep moving forward and give it to God, give it to Him, give your battles to Him, and understand that you're not what you've been through. And when we talk about domestic violence as well, we need to talk about the signs. We need to talk about the red flags. We need to talk about that it's not just physical, it's also mental, it's also financial abuse. But and not just that, we also need to talk about how to understand what gaslighting really is, the manipulation tactics, and also too a lot of the how they put up a wall sometimes, and we stonewalling is what they call it. And so we really need to talk about those components.
So let's get to those components. Let's talk about some of that. I have a friend, there was 4 of us from high school. We didn't go to the same high school. We all worked at Winn-Dixie together. And, one of our friends, unfortunately, she's no longer in the relationship, but it has affected her the rest of her life so dramatically. And we all keep trying to lift her up and getting that help. But we even, like, as her friends, didn't see some of the red flags, and didn't recognize that. So let's start with red flags. And Gigi, those that are listening that maybe aren't sure, like, what are some of those red flags? And also maybe talk about, from somebody from the outside, that, what are some of the things that we can look for if we're concerned about somebody, and is there things that we can do to help them?
Absolutely. So oftentimes control, manipulation tactics, oftentimes the individual wants to keep folks away from their family or friends, things of that nature. And oftentimes they come off very charismatic. And so it could definitely be very manipulative. You may not even be aware, but that's why if you know the signs and the red flags, this can be prevented. It can be prevented. I truly believe in that. And that's why I'm such a huge advocate for it today. And again, if you're in that situation, you're not alone. I have forgiven, and I have moved forward, and I still continue to advocate, because again, it's very important to continue to do so. And so you forgive so you can move forward. And also too, I want to share this as well. In the Bible, it states that we need to forgive.
Yeah.
Very important.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you. I think forgiveness is key. And it doesn't mean that and forgiving that, you accepting what they did, right? It's just, you have to have that peace. It's sort of like, my dad turned racist towards my son, as he became growing into his adulthood. And I didn't know about some of the things he did till later on when I went to go visit his ex-wife. And so I was a daddy's girl. I mean, I was the example of what a daddy's girl was like. And I had to put secure boundaries around that relationship. And I released him as being, he's always my dad, but I released that relationship and put boundaries around it. And I forgave him. However, it doesn't mean I have to stay around him and be involved with him if I choose not to. And so when you touch about some of the red flags, like the control and the isolation. So if you are somebody that has a friend that you're watching them and you see these red flags, what's something that somebody might be able to do? Because, I know you can't necessarily just go and say, oh, I think that your partner is doing this to you, right? So how do you support them to open up the environment that says, I'm your safe space if you need to talk?
Absolutely. Great question. So essentially, I had an individual in one of our panels. They shared how they saw someone beating someone else up, their partner. And so something of that nature, for example, call the proper authorities. It's not you intervening. It's you saying, okay, I'm seeing another human being being beaten and doing what's right.
Yeah. And yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Like if you see that, and I've done it before when I've seen like with children too. It's like, okay, this is, not right. In a store one time. So let's say that you don't see that situation, but maybe you have a concern that your friend is in a situation where they're being, isolated, being controlled. They're not allowed to be with their friends and things like that. What should somebody do if they see those kind of red flags?
Talk to their friend.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to their friend.
Is there things that you should say or because sometimes they're not wanting to hear it. I feel sometimes, and you tell me if I'm wrong, I've not been in that situation, but I feel sometimes you're in denial that it's happening. And then when you have a friend come and say, I've seen this, I have some concerns, I do know people who their friends cut them off and said, you don't know what you're talking about. So tell us about like what type of approach, is there words you could say, or what's the best way to approach that when you talk to your friend?
That is such a great question. So essentially, oftentimes your friends will see it before you do, and you may not understand. How do I know that? Because I've been there. And so I remember my friend saying, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" I'm saying, "Yes, I'm fine." And so I may have felt fine, but outside they can see that I wasn't fine. They knew because maybe they did know the signs and red flags. So it's so important when you are speaking with your friend, maybe sit them down and talk to them more about the signs and the red flags. And also too, and I'm grateful for those who chatted with me. But again, we need to go a little bit more deeper and talk about signs and red flags. And also too, when we talk about what one of my good friends says, he said, Gigi, you couldn't see it because you were in the picture. Don't blame yourself. He told me, do not blame yourself. And
yeah, absolutely.
Support.
Totally agree with your friend. Like you don't blame yourself because you're right. You're in it. You don't realize it. Sometimes you don't even know it's happening, and your outside friends, family can see it and have that concern. So let's talk about, I hear this word often, Gigi, gaslighting, right? So talk about what that means. Because I know for me, for a long time, I didn't understand what gaslighting means. And so talk to our listeners and walk them through what is gaslighting and what are some of the signs for it.
I love that question. And so when we talk about gaslighting, the term, the example I have here is picture yourself at a restaurant with the individual whom you may be with dating. And now the waiter tells you something and you all are communicating. And now this person that you're with now gets angry with the waiter over maybe something very minor. And then now you're basically telling this person, hey, I saw that, what happened. And then maybe there's some back and forth there. And then that person now is completely saying that didn't happen. So essentially making you perceive that something else may have occurred when you know it's face on. I mean, we could play back the tapes in the restaurant. Maybe if there was some audio, you can hear it too. So that's a great example. And I utilize that because it gives you a clear image of what gaslighting really is.
That's a great example, an image. I love that image because I could never understand it. And when you said that, it reminded me about in July, and it's almost exactly what you said. I went to a restaurant in over in Reddington Beach with some friends, and we're sitting in a really nice restaurant, and all of a sudden we heard this slamming of it at the table next to us. And it basically was some of what you said, like the conversation, like, well, that's not what the waiter said. And I was like, so, and we all, like, all of us got concerned for the young girl that was there, and they all up and left. So it was very scary. But the gap, that example is so clear. So when you, what do you think we need to do in our society, in our education? One of the things I remember my boys when they started dating at a young age, especially Matthew. Matthew was adopted, so he had this trying to find his identity, right? Matthew was adopted by, we were an all white family. His biological family, he was the only African American child, even in his biological family. So he had a lot of struggles there. But I remember when he first started dating, we talked a lot about, you can't control what's going to happen. This is a relationship. You have to have, like your dad and I, we communicate and everything. So we really talked about education on relationships. But I'm seeing in some of the work that I'm doing at some of the high schools here locally, where the young girls, like, they're like, oh, my boyfriend said I can't do that. My boyfriend said I can't do that, and we start having conversations around that. What are you seeing today in that realm of our younger girls? And what are some of the things that we can do to change and educate on that?
Yeah, that absolutely breaks my heart. And it reminds me of a conversation I had with a good friend of mine before we had our global domestic violence survivors event last year. And I remember her sitting me down and her saying, hey, we need to cover the fact that folks in COVID, during COVID, their situation as well. And I remember us going a little bit deeper, and me asking, what do you believe is happening? And she said, we need to cover what may be happening behind closed doors, because here now you have a very, very, very severe topic. And now, even now, the circumstances now on top of that, picture that. And so now, not only the person may tell you that you can and cannot do this, but now you're in a situation where you cannot even leave home. You cannot even leave your home. And so we had to talk about it because it's very important. And so when you see sign, that is a red flag, by the way. Huge red flag.
So, yeah. And you're right. I keep forgetting that, we're getting further away from the lockdowns of COVID and everything, but you're right. We did have that situation where the situations where they were locked down with their abuser and not feeling like they can go, like even to go outside to go to work kind of thing. So what are some of the things that I want to break that down a little bit more. So what are some of the things that we can do, our educators can even do at the schools? Because I feel like we're seeing more and more of that, especially here in where I'm at in this area. I feel like in certain schools, based on the income level and the dynamics of the area that they're at, that's becoming a big issue. And the understanding that my life is valuable and that I am an individual and I don't need to be, controlled or isolated. How can we, as educators, and even for our listeners that are moms, that when they are concerned that their daughter, kind of, what can they do to have conversations and around that? And who are some of the people that they should reach out to if they have these concerns?
Absolutely. First and foremost, domestic violence is a hardcore topic. And I say that because, and it's not just hardcore, but it's also complex to many, especially if you're not aware of it and you don't understand what it is. And so we need to continue to educate others about it. And when you say what folks can do, essentially, if you notice those signs and red flags, speak with your family members, speak with your friends. Don't be afraid to do so. And remember that you're not alone. Joshua 1:9 states, having I commanded you, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for your Lord your God is with you wherever you go. And if you're listening to this message today and you are aware of those signs and red flags that I'm talking about, you are in a dangerous relationship. And I encourage you to do what's best.
Yeah, definitely reach out for help and get a coach or a mentor or somebody that can help guide you. So let's go back to your story a little bit. So here, you've been strangled, you're laying down. So what was your next steps and how did you do that? I mean, it takes a lot to stand up and say, and that it takes a lot of strength, right? To push through the fear of, because, in some cases I've heard where, some of the victims are like, I'm afraid that I won't be able to make it on my own. I'm afraid that, I'm going to lose friends, right? I'm going to lose my family or those kind of things. How did you finally bring yourself to say after the strangulation death, the death by strangulation, how did you take that next step? Because
Great
I know
question.
the first step is the biggest step of fear, right? Like fear of I can't do this.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. And so I'm grateful for the support from my family, my friends, the community as well. And also too, when we talk about my faith, just giving it to him, letting go and letting him. And like I said, I got baptized again as an adult, and I'm just, again, grateful to be here. Yeah, that's life changing. Has transformed my life. And when we talk about me sharing the story, even then, I recall what my good friend said. He said, you need to share your story. It may help someone. And that for me was enough to come forward and share the story. It's not easy to share something in regards to domestic violence. Not easy at all. If you're listening to this message, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I am so proud of you all who have your own story, who come forward. God bless you.
Absolutely. And I'm proud of you. I mean, it takes a lot of strength and to share that story. And, I always tell, I volunteer in different areas, and I'm also a coach for a local nonprofit here. And I always say to them, you have a story, you need to write your story. It doesn't mean like you have to publish it, but put it down on paper. So, because it's therapeutic, to release some of those feelings and everything. But I always remind them that unfortunately, somebody's going to come behind you. They're in a safe space where they can be in a home with their children, and then there's tools and everything to help them move from either homelessness or domestic violence or overcoming a drug addiction. But I will always share with them, somebody's going to come behind you. So if you could leave notes to them or your own words to them, what would those words be? And so we talk about, you have a story. We all have a story, and it's whether it's the trauma we're talking about with domestic violence or death by strangulation, or if it's other traumas or challenges you had in your life, somebody can learn from our stories, right? I mean, I share my story of grief and losing Matthew last year. I share my story of releasing my dad in my life because it wasn't what I felt was right, and it's not something I want around for my children, and it's not a relationship that for me I felt was a healthy relationship any longer. And so I really, like you said, and for listeners that are listening, I think it's important to know that yes, we all have a story like Gigi is sharing, and to write that down, and even if it's just that you are writing and throwing it away or burning it, at least you're releasing it, right? And I think there's a lot of power in that. So Gigi, tell us about your books that you've written.
Absolutely. And real quick, before I talk about the books, I want to circle back to what you said there as far as the notes. You asked, what notes would I leave for someone who may have not shared their story yet or is wondering if their voice even matters? Yes, your voice matters. Your story matters. And we need you on the front lines sharing your story. And why? Because picture the individual who is in that situation or is just coming out. They need your message. And the folks who have not been through that, they need your message. And so, and I say that because it's so important to educate. Education is key. And so you have a duty, essentially, if you've been through that, to really educate others about it. You could sit there and do nothing, but I don't think that is best. And like I said, I'm grateful for my friend who said, Gigi, you need to share your story. It may help someone. And again, for me, that was enough to come forward. And again, I want to circle back and say your voice matters. And when we talk about the books, we have the God First book and we have the Walk With Me book. And then also too, the Overcoming Heart Blocks, Inspiring Stories for Healing from Trauma. And then several other books as well. But when we talk about the books, they are all for you. And I mean that in a genuine way.
So what's the takeaway that when somebody's reading your books, what are some of the takeaways you want for them to when they read your books?
Essentially, when we talk about Walk With Me, understanding the importance of never giving up and walking with purpose. And when we talk about God first, understanding the importance of having God first in your life, not just in your life, but all areas of your life. It's very, very important. And understanding the importance of having him first in our society.
I totally agree with you. I say all the time, whether it's your faith or you have that, whatever that belief is. I mean, for me, it's God first for me. And, he's carried me through so much, and it just so much. I think that's powerful to have that faith and that belief. And so tell us a little bit. So when somebody works with you and they're coming to work with you on your coaching, what's that experience like when somebody's first coming to work with you?
Great question. So essentially, I'm all about meeting people where they are and building relationships. And so it's so important to listen and not assume. And it's so important to ask questions, because the person can be in front of you and you can assume anything in the world. But again, that's not going to do them any good. It's very important to meet people where they are. And I love it. And I say that in a genuine way. I mean that in a genuine way. And again, I love helping folks achieve their goals. And my job is not done until I assist you with achieving every single one of those goals, because I believe in you. And I know you can do this. And I want to circle back to the books here real quick, because Overcoming Heart Blocks, Inspiring Stories for Healing from Trauma. When we talk about trauma, we really need to talk about it. We really need to go there as well. It's now time in the society where we should be able to talk about that and really get to the root of what's going on here, what's causing that friction, what's causing folks to really be able to move forward with their lives, or even walk in purpose, in God's purpose for their lives. We really need to talk about it. It's very important.
I totally agree with you, because we do need to talk about it. It's interesting, because at our retreat this past week that we had, we were talking about how it used to be a taboo. You shouldn't tell anybody your story. You shouldn't go to a therapist. You shouldn't go to a coach. All these things. And now, but even back then, it truly was a sign of strength. And society was telling us it was a sign of weakness, right? And so I truly believe that today that's so important, especially like we were talking earlier about COVID, coming out of COVID. So many people have PTSD from COVID and trauma from COVID just itself. And so I agree with you. I think we need to understand that we have to, it's okay to get that help. It's okay to say, can you guide me? Can you hold my hand? Can you hold my arm and help me walk through this? Help me understand, like we've talked about these red flags, this gaslighting, help me understand and see the signs so that I can take care of me, and then I can offer up what I need help with. Right. I think it's so important. So in your bio, we also talked about some of the chapters that you're in, the World Women Conference and Awards. Tell us about some of the awards as well, and also share about your podcast.
Absolutely. So WWCA, World Women Conference and Awards, is an honor to be a part of their team. And when we talk about World Women Conference and Awards, I love the work that they're doing on the front lines. And Ragnar Stanika, she's the CEO and founder of that organization, and she's a powerhouse. And she has several other networks as far as what's in WWCA. So she has the different chapters, so to speak. And so each team truly matters. So to combine, it's one team. And again, I'm just grateful for the work that they're doing. And when we talk about the podcast, Walk With Me, it's about helping others walk with purpose. And honestly, I just love meeting people where they are.
So talk to the person who's sitting here listening to you and I right now, that is saying, walk with purpose, foo-foo, whatever. Like, what does that really mean, Gigi?
It means walking in the purpose God has given you. And it's a blessing. It's truly a blessing. And my good friend I grew up with, she believes in a higher power. And she says, Gigi, you still love me? I was like, of course I do. Are you kidding me? We grew up. We were so young. And so she loves me as I am. She loves my faith, and she loves me as I am. And to me, that's it. That's enough. That's enough. We meet each other where we are.
And I love that. We have to learn to meet each other where we're at. And so I'm going to ask you to go a little deeper. So, the listeners listening going, but what if I don't know my purpose? Like, what if I'm really not sure what my purpose is? Like, what are some things somebody can do to find that purpose?
Absolutely. Get quiet, be quiet, and stay still. And I mean that in a genuine way. And oftentimes when you just sit back and you just let go and let him, oftentimes it's right in front of you. As my good friend Melanie says, it's right in front of you.
Okay, so I'm going to go deeper. Okay, so what if I don't see it? What if I'm struggling sitting quietly and I'm not seeing it? Like, what are some of the things that I can do to help me find that purpose? Even though I'm sitting quietly and I am offering it up, but I'm still like, I've got this block. Like, what are some things that somebody can do to help them like really step into that purpose?
if you truly want to know. Oftentimes, again, like my friend said, it's in front of you, or God will let you know. But oftentimes, if you really want to know, you can also pray. You can also pray, but that doesn't mean that he's going to tell you right then and there. You may need to wait.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because when I'm working with my clients, they'll be like, but I don't know what I want to do. I'm like, okay, so we start, I say to them, I said, listen, I truly believe that when we are created, God has put these talents and these tools within us that's there, that we have to figure out what they are, right? Because when we don't figure out what they are, we're cheating ourselves on what the beautiful gift we've been provided is. And then when you do figure that out, when you don't bring it forward, like what you do, like the coaching that I love to do, and even like having a podcast like you do and I do right here, when we don't take that talent, that power, and that passion that we've discovered for ourselves, we not just cheat ourselves, but we cheat, everybody else, because they're not receiving that gift that is there for us. The gift of like you sharing your story about what you've been through, the gift of me, sharing and coaching somebody to say, what is it you want? Let's figure this out and walk through things like what brings them joy and what they have to remove from their life so that it can walk into that purpose. And so tell us a little bit about, as you went through this and you decided to come forward with your story and do this, what do you see, Gigi, is the next thing that's on the horizon for you? What are some of the things that you feel you've been called to start sharing and putting out there for others to receive?
That's a great question. Before I get to my story and what God has called me to do next, I want to circle back real quick to what you mentioned there, because it's so important. And I can't help but think about a woman. When you talk about purpose and understanding what God needs you to do now, I can't help but think about a woman. And her story is that I believe she was diving, she was swimming, and she went diving, and she got injured very badly. And I remember the documentary, and I remember as I'm watching it, and I remember her not figuring it out, but understanding God's purpose for her life. And that didn't just come at the snap of a finger. She didn't just get injured and then God told her, okay, I need you to do this now. And she's become an artist. She's a painter, but she cannot utilize her hands. She utilizes her mouth. And so, yes, for those of you who are listening, you know exactly who I'm talking about. And bless her heart, bless her soul. And I find her story very inspiring because, again, it's letting go and letting him. Oftentimes, if you're not aware of what your purpose is, that's just how life is sometimes. But God, so like my friend said, Melanie, it's right in front of you. And what did she have? She had the paintbrush and the canvas, and she painted. Did she know she could paint? No, but God did.
It's such a beautiful story that, we can figure things out, and like you said, God knows what we can do, and she's using, her mouth to do these beautiful things. It also reminds me of, oh my gosh, it's the gymnast. I don't know if it's Natalie Comaneci, where she actually had a sister that was given up for adoption who did not have her lower extremities. And she was adopted by a family. I know it's family here in the U.S. Her name's escaping me, and maybe if it comes for the end of the show, I'll share it. But we went on a cruise for my Rotary, and she came in and she was one of our keynote speakers. And it's interesting how her and her sister did not grow up together, but they're both gymnasts. And so she's a gymnast without any lower extremities. And then she's doing the, oh my gosh, what's the thing? The Circus Soleil things she's doing that kind of stuff. And then she just had a baby. It's like, nothing has to hold you back. And even who's a gentleman doesn't have his extremities. Do you know what I'm talking about? Vidic, or I can't say his name.
Nick.
Yeah.
Nick.
Yeah. So it's so cool because like what he does, he's taking his message across the world on stages and showing, and is a prime example that nothing has to hold you back. That your story, your trauma, these, physical things that from the outside looks like, oh my gosh, they can't do nothing, when nothing has to hold you back. It's just finding a way to do it differently. I interviewed a lady one time and she said, I'm differently abled. So instead of saying I'm disabled, she's like, I'm differently able. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just love that. I just think it's so powerful to use what we've been given, as we said a few minutes ago, what that talent is and what God is, our story, our journey, and doing something with it and not saying, I'm going to sit in a corner and just pity me. It's sort of like, I have many people say to me, I don't understand, Pearl, how you're so strong, how, you lost your son a year ago, and how are you doing what you're doing? And I tell everybody, listen, 2015, I don't know who the heck I was. I thought I was a mom and a wife, and that was my role, and I realized I hated PTA meetings. I hated the drama of all that stuff. And who the heck was Pearl? And after I did a 6-week course of identity and destiny, I still didn't have the answer. So I went on a journey to figure out who I was. And I realized I wasn't alone. There's many of us, especially women, that say, I'm going to say yes to everybody else and no to me first. And as I finally realized I matter and I have to show up for me first, I stepped into who I was. And then the bonus of that was I stepped up better, so much better for my family, my kids, my friends, and for what I want to do in this world. And so I said to somebody one time, I said, he saw that before Matt passed. He saw me do that. So why do I live my life differently just because he's not physically here? He's still with me. And so when he's looking down at me, he's going to go, really, Mom? Just because I'm not there, you're going to do this, And so it's so true to step into the gift that we have. And thank you for reminding us all of that as well. And so let's talk about what's coming up for Gigi. What's the next thing on the horizon? I know before we hopped on, you have this great event coming up in Miami. So let's talk about that and share that and tell us what we can expect coming around the corner for you.
Great question. So essentially, that's the Royal Warriors Conference. That's next week. That's September 29th through the 30th. I'm really looking forward to it. Make sure to reserve your seat. It's an event you do not want to miss. It's a leadership, business, and faith-based conference. A lot of value will be provided, and we will have a notebook and a pen for you. Again, this is an event you do not want to miss. I believe in you. And if you're listening to this message today, don't give up and keep the faith. Keep the faith.
So I know I got to speak on one of your summits that you did recently. Do you have any other summits coming up that are planned?
Yes, ma'am. So that's with Ragnar Sinikas, and that's we do it every year. We have the Global Domestic Violence event, Survivors event, and also the breast cancer event coming up, and also the cancer event.
So tell us about those events and how we can connect with you on those.
Absolutely. And so again, remembering that if you are a survivor, that your voice matters, and we need you out there on the front lines advocating. And it's so important, not just raising awareness, but also educating others about those components that we covered earlier. Signs and red flags, very important. Again, does not just happen to women. It also happens to men. A good friend of mine's, Grady Taylor, he came forward at the Global Domestic Violence event. He's a gentleman, and he came forward. He talks about how he got hit in the eye socket. And I share that because, again, this can happen to men. We cannot exclude men out just because if for example, a man has abused it. We have to really talk about it and be fair. It happens to women and it happens to men. And this can happen anywhere.
Yeah, that's so true. I know, we talked earlier about Michelle Dewsbury, and we've been talking about that a lot because there are men out there that are abusive. And, and when we talk about, some relationships, it's the same sex relationship. It's there. And we all need to know that it's not acceptable and that there is help and there's ways to get help and to step out of that. And so if somebody wanted to be part of your world, how do they reach out to you, Gigi?
Absolutely. They can contact us via Life Service Center of America. They can contact the team, and also contact, if you want to contact me, LinkedIn. And also I want to circle back to what you said there again, because the importance of forgiveness truly matters. And it's very important to forgive, and so that you can move forward. And oftentimes when I listen to folks and they say, well, I'm not ready yet. Okay. Take your time. But again, remembering the importance of forgiveness. And so if you're listening to this message today, I encourage you to just get in a quiet area, stay still, and really think about what occurred and think about the importance of forgiveness. I believe in you. And I know that's easier said than done, right? But and trust me, I've been there, right? But forgiveness truly matters. And once you do that, then come and talk to me. I look forward to speaking with you.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you, Gigi. Forgiveness is a huge part of the healing as well, and it's very, very important. I know my parents divorced after 43 years of marriage, and I'm always on my mom. I'm like, Mom, you're still sitting in the same place doing the same thing, and you need to forgive. You need to forgive yourself, right? Because you feel like you didn't do more for yourself, but you also need to forgive my dad. I've forgiven my dad, but it doesn't mean you have to have a relationship with the person that you're forgiving, right? And I think it's so important if we can do that. So we're going to do a little shift with a little bit of time we have left. So
Awesome.
we're all about fun and self care as well too. And so self care is so important, even with the subject that we're talking about. And I really feel like I haven't asked this question in a while, and I think it's an important question to ask around the subject we're talking about. So when I coach with women and I work with, some of the things we do is we have what's called our Shiro method. So it's creating that roadmap to the life they want to live. But when you turn on a car, you need gas, you need a battery, you need tires, right? And then you have to have the map of where you're going. But to get to that map of where we're going, we have to identify some things about you that make you feel great, right? So we talk about identifying what brings you joy. And so I usually make them do a list of 10 things that bring them joy and why. And so, we always get they always saying, well, I joy because I wake up. That's great. I wake up every morning too. And I'm thankful that, God's given me the opportunity to wake up today. But what about waking up makes you joyful? So we start breaking it down. And one time I had a hairstylist. She's like, I doing my job, cutting people's hair brings me joy. I'm like, okay, great. But what about it brings you joy? And she would tell me, well, because I sit in there and I put color on them. I go, great. I can go to the store and buy box hair color. What about you putting the hair color on their hair brings you joy, right? And so as she would say it, I'm like, okay, so what about that? And finally she's like, really what it is that I'm sitting there watching them transform in my chair, and I'm watching them come in maybe with not so much confidence and watch them walk out with confidence. I go, see, there's what brings you joy about what you do, right? So we don't have time for you to give us 10 things, Gigi, but I would love for you to give us 3 things that bring you joy, and why do they bring you joy?
Excellent. So to start off, my faith truly matters to me. My faith means the world to me, as I mentioned earlier. And again, it's so important to have God first, not just in your life, but also in your business and all areas of your life. And I love it. And when we talk about prayer, the importance of prayer, it's very important. And I'm just grateful to be able to do so now on the phone as well. So not necessarily having the hard copy of the Bible and not having to bring it everywhere, but also nowadays they have it on the mobile device, which is amazing because you can read it right where you are, and it has various languages. I get excited about that because I think about the folks who may want to read it, and they may speak a different language. And yes, you heard it. You can read it because they have it in various languages. And so when we talk about number 2, what about it gives me joy? My family. I love my family, and I'm very family oriented, as I've always been that way. And last and third, my friends. I love my friends, and yeah, that's about it. Those are the 3.
Okay, so I'm going to break it down. You did a great example about the faith, and I agree with you. I think it's so cool about it being on your phone in all the languages. I mean, we've come so far, so far and all that. And so family, I love. So for those that are listening right now, go watch on YouTube as well, because you'll see like Gigi's smile just got so big. It was as big as the screen when she talked about all of these things. So tell me about your family. Tell me a memory about your family that just warms your heart, that brings you joy.
I love when we get together for Thanksgiving.
Okay,
I
so
love it.
so
I love
some people are listening going, Thanksgiving family dinner, right? Like you hear on that side, right? So what about having Thanksgiving dinner with your family? What does that do for your soul?
Thank you. And so picture this, my family and I, we're very busy throughout the year. And so we all live in various locations. And it's not that it's Thanksgiving Day. It's not the day. It's more so the dinner and the quality time with family. I repeat, that's the quality time with family where we get to sit down, and the folks who may not be able to join us are now able to fly out, air, travel, and drive and join us that day. But again, it's not necessarily the day, it's a dinner and the quality time. And that's what I love.
I love that. Quality time and conversations is always so, so much fun. My husband jokes and tells everybody, Pearl knows how to cook twice a year, Thanksgiving and Christmas. I'm like, I know how to cook more than that. But I'm like, I love putting all that effort in because like everybody's gathering together. We're having great conversation, great food. We're not rushing through dinner. It's so, so, so amazing. I love that. So tell us about your friends. What are some of the things that you do with your friends that just fill your cup?
I love my friends. And you know what? You know what I love? I love the fact that we all, and here's the thing, when we get together, because we all, I can think about the roles that they do, right? And I know they're very, very busy as well. And I love when we get together, because when we get together, and I can say this about each and every one of my friends, we pick up right where we left off. There's no, oh, well, I didn't hear from you in this long, or you didn't call in this long, or where have you been? It's no, let me meet you where you are and let's pick up the ball and let's just keep it moving. And that's what I love about it. And that's what I love about my friends. And I love the work that they're doing on the front lines. Bless their souls for some of the roles that they're in. My goodness. It's just grateful for the work that they do, and just very appreciative and grateful for our friendship. And it's a blessing. And going back to 1, 2, 3, and 4, number 4 for me would be to serving others. It does give me joy. And also too, and because I love helping others and I love meeting people where they are and helping them achieve their goals. And I want to talk about the importance of that, because as God's servants, we're called to serve his people.
Yeah, I agree. I love what you said too about your friends, and and like I've been known to hop on a plane and go show up at a friend's house and be like, "Hey, how you doing?" They're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Because I want to come see you." I've been known to do that. It's so much fun. And you're right, to serve others. I love that what I do. I love to be able to serve others. I love to share my story. I just came off this retreat and we have a special thing we do. I'm not going to say it here because it's a secret, but it's really about a transformation, and you have to be 100% in. So when your name is picked during the retreat, if you're not 100% in, then you can't receive, because it's all about stepping in to what is there in front of you and trusting that what's about to happen will bring a transformation into your life. And I really think, like, when we serve others, I think that's also too what we're doing. Like, we're helping them to transform something in their lives and give them that faith and that love of saying, you got this, you can do this, and nothing's going to hold you back. And so I'm going to flip it around a little bit. So one of the other things that we do is when we do this roadmap, we talk about what, in order to achieve the things that bring you joy. So talk about our faith and our family and our friends. We have to sometimes create what I like to call the not to do list. We make all these lists about, I got to go grocery shopping. I need to get this. I need to call this person, do that for my business. We never stop and say, if I want to continue spending time in my faith and enjoying my faith, if I want to continue spending those Thanksgiving dinners with my family or being around my friends and just showing up where we're at, I have to learn to say no to things so that I can be present. And those can be, anything. Like I've had people talk about saying no to the negative thoughts, right, that come up in our head. So if you were to take 3 things, Gigi, and that you would have to put on your not to do list, what would some of those things be for you?
That is a very, very great question. The not to do list. Okay. So I want to circle back to this real quick before I get to 1, 2, and 3. I love what Ayanna Van Zandt says, because she says, and I may have butchered her name, but here it is. She's a powerhouse. And I love what she says about the importance of saying no. And I love how she says that there are several ways to say no. And it is very true. And the reality is, if you say yes to everything, you cannot be where God has called you to be or where he needs you to serve. And so 1, 2, and 3 for me have to be, number 1, being in an area, being in an event or some sort, when I know darn on well, God has told me, hey, you need to be with this client at this certain time. It's on your calendar. No, you will not find me at an event at that time, because I'm tuned in with the client like God has called me to serve. Number 2, I will not book anything on my calendar. And so I'm very strict with my calendar on when I'm available. Why? Because, and the burnout too, you have to be careful too, so you don't experience burnout. Because if you're burning out, how can you truly show up and serve others? You can't be present. if you're saying yes to everything and you're completely booked. So if you don't take if you're telling me you can't take a lunch break, then there's something wrong. So I have my lunch schedule, and I have my fitness trainer, thank God. And so when we talk about my lunch, I know I need to have a lunch break. And so I do. But also too, I know the importance of having a schedule. So basically my point is don't be afraid to have a schedule. Very important. Number 3 would be, for me, basically, I love quality time, but you also have to be mindful of balance, having balance in your life. When can you truly have quality time, or date night, so to speak, right? And so it's very, very important to, again, circle back to the calendar, making sure that you're well balanced. And because, why do I say that? Because if you're burnt out, you cannot serve others from an empty cup.
So true. I always say, put your cape on first, because if you can't hug all those people that you want to hug even tighter. So that's so true. Well, thank you for playing along with me on those questions. I hadn't asked them on the show in a little bit, and I thought, I'm going to play this with Gigi today, because I knew she would be great at sharing some great feedback on that. All right. So everybody knows, I've already told Gigi, I've given her the forewarning that we always do our Better Questions, Better Life cards. So these are not mine. I don't get anything back, but my friend Carol Gill and Diane Allen, they create these cards. There are over 77 cards of questions to make you think about what's happening in your life. Maybe you journal over it, you meditate over it, whatever feels right for you. So we're going to shuffle the cards, and Gigi's going to tell me when to stop, and we're going to ask her one of the questions. So here we go. Tell me when to stop, Gigi.
Okay, keep going. One moment, letting go and letting God hear. Keep going. Right there.
Oh, she got me right there. Okay.
Got chills.
This is great. It says, where will I go from here? So where will you go from here, Gigi?
Where will I go from here? Not sure. Only God knows. And letting go and letting Him.
I love that. Yeah. Letting go and letting Him. This has been so much fun. I've loved having you on this show. I loved all the education that we gave, and all the great understanding of red flags and what gaslighting is, and some of those things that we can do to support one another. And then also remember the things what we have to say no to, so we can have the things that we want to be joyful about in our life. And so if you're listening to us, remember to go follow us on YouTube. And if you want more information about our retreat for next year, because 40% of the ladies that were there are coming back, so we have a few spots left already, just go to wslivingretreats.com. That's wslivingretreats.com. And I love to make sure everybody can come. So we have anything from pay in full to 12-month payment plans. So you can't say no to that. And so I just want to remind you, before you leave today, that we come into this world, we are a little rough on the outside, this oyster that we're building on the inside. But as you open it up, you do find your inner pearl to greatness. And I want each and every one of you to go out today and find your inner pearl to greatness. Have an amazing day.
Amen. God bless you and be safe.
Hello, sunshine, good to see you again.